Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Romaine Piper. Romaine is the founder and CEO of Call Center Escape, an Upwork built for BPO companies. Known for his cross-dimensional approach to company growth, he has helped some of the fastest growing startups across Silicon Valley, the UK, and Europe to identify and hone their top growth levers, adding millions to their bottom line. No one would have guessed his 6-year remote work journey in customer success, sales, and growth hacking started in the Jamaican BPO industry as a customer support agent for Microsoft, which is why he's back to his roots to make BPO companies that are scaling remotely 1.5 to 2 times more profitable with an industry-first solution. So without further delay, sit back, plug your earphones in, and let's jump right into this conversation with Romaine. Welcome, Romaine.
Hey, Yannick, it's good to be here.
All right, so we always like to ask our guests in their own words if you could share a little bit about your journey, how it is that you ended up on this path.
Yeah. All right, no problem. So, you mentioned a lot about my background and, the whole tech industry and everything, but here's the plot twist. I actually started out pursuing my career, in medicine, and, I had really high grades. I got a scholarship from St. John's University in New York. But the thing is, even though they were willing to pay half the tuition, I still couldn't afford the other half. So anybody out there that's listening, it's not easy giving up a scholarship that you work really hard for.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, emotional. I've had like many like weeks of crying. And so the BPO industry was to me a quote unquote fallback period, if that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
where, I just wanted to like dust myself off, put some experience on my resume and just try to figure out, okay, what's next? But then I realized this is actually a blessing in disguise because I work for Southern Global Services and they placed me on the Microsoft account, right? Being on the Microsoft account, like fresh out of high school, it's a whole ton of learning for me. And just to give you like a idea of what it's like at the time, across all of their customer support teams, they had over 500,000 articles, which
Wow.
is the most I've ever seen in a knowledge base ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was what pushed me from liking the tech industry to literally loving the tech industry, to craving to, for more, for having that passion. And also into what allowed me to work with startups around the world, within those roles, customer success, sales, growth hacking, etc., and to be advising startup founders. I remember too that my mom, I think around three or 4 years ago, said, "Hey, I know that you can actually afford to pay the tuition for medicine. Like, do you ever consider going back?" And I said, "Hey, like I'm pretty good at what I already do. You know, um, I love it, and yeah, like that ship has long sailed. So anybody that's out there with, the BPO industry being your fallback period, like literally, just take it serious, do really well, and you'll figure it out."
All right. So the BPO industry, it's a very evolving industry, an industry with a high level of attrition.
Yep. Yep.
What what has been your experience as an owner in this industry for attracting the right talent and actually keeping the right talent?
All right. Well, actually, call center escape is radically different because we aren't a call center, we aren't a BPO. What we instead do is we help um, contact centers to evolve. In other words, to increase their profit per hour per employee by 150% to 200% by focusing or helping them to strategically focus on two core things, right? Which is their payback period for every new hire. In other words, how quickly can they break even in all the things that they use to invest in that new hire? as well as the employee lifetime value. In other words, how how much is their ROI for each employee, over the duration of their tenure at the company,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so this is what allows us to help to take contact centers to break away from this, the traditional cost center model that, just it just no longer works in this post-COVID and post-ChatGPT environment anymore. Like this is a new era, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we
Mm-hmm.
help them to shift away from that and to shift into the new era of what I call um earning more with less, right? So yeah, that's also why we even call ourselves like a quote unquote Upwork for BPOs in
Right.
terms of to describe what we do, because everybody's familiar with Upwork. Even if they're not, they're familiar with like what are virtual assistants, right? So they know the autonomy, they know the approach that they would take now to having that person on their staff, etc. It's the same exact process when a contact center partners with us. It's just that where the reason why we added the build to for BPO part to it is because we optimize for those two core things.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it more profitable.
So, could you share with our listeners, seeing that you're helping the BPO to strategically position themselves as a value center versus a cost center, what are two to
Yeah.
three things that you do to help them get to that point?
All right. To understand that, we first have to mention what are the core money sucking um areas that contact centers usually have to, struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's usually three areas. It's operations, or what I call like focusing on pleasing the client, whether it's customer experience, solutions, or investing more in coaching, etc. And then you have retention being the second one, which is the largest one. In other words, employee replacement costs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Cha-ching.
Yep.
And then also hiring and training, which is also a huge part of the pie. The thing is, the contact center industry hasn't really been innovative at all since the foundation. In 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 most of the areas, it's only been innovative in one area, which is operations,
Mm-hmm.
right? Polishing how they deliver that CX experience, but not really focusing on hiring and training, not really focusing much on retention. In other words, if every single contact center executive was to wake up tomorrow and see a 10% yearly annual attrition rate, or $100 new employee costs, the industry wouldn't be the mess that it's in today, right?
Right.
So so those are the things that we focus on. The two core things that, especially when you're scaling remotely, it's just harder to solve. So like, let me give you an example of how we, just do it more strategically. So like, let's take hiring. When you add up internal recruiting costs, external recruiting costs, the fact that around 30% of new hires don't make it to production. I even remember seeing some numbers of around 50% of new hires leaving within 30 days.
Wow.
Um, I think it's best, or in other words, my team and I have decided that the best way to really approach hiring would be from like how you would see like a grocery shop grow, right? Like a grocery shop, for example, which is a really good analogy we tend to use, would have a variety of different customer segments, whether it's from like low value to high value customers.
Mm-hmm.
So like some customers would spend $100 for the month, some would spend $600 for the month, etc.
Right.
What if you market to only the ones spending $600 for the month? In other words, the high value ones.
Mm-hmm.
That same principle can be applied to HR. That same principle can be applied to talent acquisition, where the high valued ones, at least based on our guidelines, are the ones with over 3 years of experience and have already been working with like Fortune 500, like previous Fortune 500 clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you market to them, it requires you understanding their motivations and not trying to, you know, go after the motivations of everybody across the board.
Right.
You cannot fight Goliath using the resources um, that you don't have. In other words, the ones that are at the top, they have all the resources that they need to build these gyms or health centers or anything that, you know, that you normally see like the huge like corporate BPOs using to attract a lot of people. But if you do the same thing, you're going to crash and burn as a smaller, you know, company. And so what we're saying is don't try to mimic them. Try to outcompete them by competing differently instead of similarly. So that's one of the ways.
Okay.
Yep.
Um, so you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation about artificial intelligence and chat
Mhm.
GPT. That's a big thing now, right? Since November
Yep.
of last year. What are your views on AI replacing human capital? Or I do recall us having a previous email conversation where you mentioned that they're building computers with human brain cells.
Yeah. All right. So I don't know why I always love talking about this topic, but growth hackers are we tend to see these things like very regularly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's Google Glasses, or even with crypto, right? We tend to see these new things and the hype built around them. I think ChatGPT is the same thing. It's a good product, but they have even better marketing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they use the fear of people, you know, possibly losing their jobs to drive the exposure to their product. But growth hackers, we always try to realign back to reality, right? In other words, we ask ourselves two things. Does it move the needle for a business? And then the other thing that we ask is this something that can be easily adopted amongst the masses?
Mm-hmm.
We knew that cryptocurrency wouldn't, you know, like grow radically as other people would put it, because it has a lot of friction just to be a part of it. It's the same thing with ChatGPT. Like it doesn't really move the needle when it comes to customer service, because customer service more has to deal with customer relationships. You know, these are things that businesses rely on to get more revenue, to get higher customer loyalty, and all of these other things. When you put something that is at the ceiling or near to the ceiling of what it can do in terms of mimicking humans,
Mm-hmm.
in control of your customer relationships, it's not going to end well. And a team of researchers from Johns Hopkins University mentioned this, that, hey, ChatGPT, no, well, they didn't call ChatGPT, but they say that AI is nearing its ceiling. And uh, it takes, I believe the research said like over a million times more energy just for it to perform exactly like the human brain for 40 minutes, which isn't sustainable at all, right? And
Yeah.
so the only way that they can really get to that next level of AI is to merge human brain cells with artificial intelligence. In other, they call this organoid intelligence, right?
Organoid.
Yeah, yeah, organoid, where they use stem cells to mimic brain cells or brain tissue that uh, can, you know, operate like the human brain cells, and then to try to configure that or merge that with AI to enhance automation abilities. So unless that is done, which is around decades out from now, or
Mm.
if not a few years, um, ChatGPT and any other AI tool that's going to be created will just be good at automating processes and not so good at automating relationships or being creative as human beings, because it just doesn't have that ability. It's more of a process-based thing
Mm-hmm.
and less of a hey, I know exactly what I'm doing type of thing because it's
Right,
only mimicking, right? That's all it's doing.
right, right. All
Yeah.
right, awesome. Now, Romaine, could you share with us what's the one online resource, tool, website, or
Mhm.
app that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
Definitely Webflow for sure because it's like a WordPress alternate. No, 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 scratch that. It's better than WordPress in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, WordPress has a few kinks when it comes to like plugins and SEO, especially technical SEO, etc. But
Mm-hmm.
Webflow is more, you're like, hey, like just handle designing. We take care of all of that back end stuff. So definitely Webflow.
Okay, so we'll have the link to that application in the show notes of this episode for our listeners. Could you also share with our listeners maybe one or two books that you've read that have had a great
Mhm.
impact on you? It could be a book that you read a very long time ago, or even one that you've read recently that has definitely
Yeah.
left a strong mark on you.
The one that I always resort to is Hacking Grow by Sean Ellis.
Mm-hmm.
So Sean Ellis is literally the person from Silicon Valley that coined the term growth hacking.
Right.
This book will allow people just to understand the realities of growth hackers and why is it that we tend to always aim to look beyond the surface of things? Why is it that we tend to always focus back on the question, does it drive the needle? And also, why is it that allows us to be change agents within organizations, like with Volkswagen hiring growth hackers to lead their innovation team so that they can, take on Elon Musk and Tesla. So like this book can literally help you to, just have that greater appreciation for the work of growth hackers across the world.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So we'll also have that book in the show notes of this episode. Romaine, could you
Yeah.
share with our audience what's the one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really
Mhm.
excited about? Either something you're working on to develop yourself or your people.
I know this is gonna sound a bit cliche, but definitely call center escape. And hear me out, by the way, because it's a good reason why. Like, not just because, we're helping contact centers to do what was once impossible, such as influencing external retention factors or, just finding more innovative ways to increase profitability, but also because one of the solutions or upcoming things on our immediate roadmap, at least within this year, is it solves a problem that contact centers usually face that would allow or would push clients to canceling their contracts, right? What we're doing is we're turning this thing, because I can't really reveal too much right now. Where this solution that we're pushing, we're enabling for this problem that's been there for decades to no longer have an impact on any contact center that partners with us to scale remotely, which is a huge deal because that means that they can go into their sales meetings and say, hey, like we've partnered with Call Center Escape, we have this guarantee, and just like our other clients that are benefiting from it, you're going to benefit from it as well. That's going to lead to them literally closing more deals and even capturing some of the clients that's been, just shopping around for just more providers or better providers, which has been a lot according to Everest Group's research. And then the last one is, I would say, one of our big, hairy, audacious goal, and that is to follow up on research that was released recently, which stated that when you increase employee engagement significantly, you can boost revenue by 50% and profit by 45%. This is a very notable piece of research because the head of global growth for Salesforce was one of the person on a team of researchers, which is like a huge deal. And so what we want to do is to partner with researchers of our own to do like a follow-up on that report with the help of, the contact centers that we've partnered with to scale, and to present this research to her, as well as, to Salesforce, so we can get their endorsement. To get Salesforce endorsement, in other words, to get the leader of the customer experience space endorsement, this would mean that we're no longer just putting contact centers at the front runner of the contact center evolution, but it would also mean that we're changing the way in which we as humans tend to do work, which is a pretty big deal, And I think with a prestigious university such as like the University of the West Indies, that's in the top 1.5% globally, like by our side to help with that research, I think this quote unquote dream will be much easier to achieve. So
All
yeah, to answer
right.
your question, I'm very much excited about it.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you for sharing, Romaine. Now, can you tell our
Yeah,
listeners where they can find you online?
sure. So any executive within the BPO industry, you can feel free to go to um, .com, where you can book 15 minutes on my calendar. We can just have a chat. It's a casual chat. It's an intro call, so that I can know your goals, and you can know more about how we work and everything, and what working together would look like. And for anyone else, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, searching my name, Romaine Piper. Um, just shoot me a message via LinkedIn. I'm very responsive, and yep, I'll be able to answer any questions you have too about what we're working on.
Awesome. So we'll have those two links for any of
Mhm.
our listeners who would like to connect with Romaine. Now, before we wrap our episodes up, we always like to ask our guests, do you have a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge you'll tend to revert to this quote? It kind of helps to get you back on track if for any reason you got derailed.
Definitely, definitely. I'm not sure how many of your listeners know Charlie Munger. He's Warren Buffett's best friend. They're both billionaires. He has a quote that goes, spend each day becoming wiser than you were when you just woke up. This is powerful, and I tend to literally live by this quote. It's also why I was able to break into the growth hacking industry. It's an industry where there are like lots of people, in their 40s and 30s. I haven't yet hit my 30s, and yet still I've gotten in solely because I spend each day just becoming wiser and wiser at, what I do. So it works.
Ah, all right, so we'll have that quote in our show notes for the episode. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much, Romaine, for taking a time out of your very busy schedule for sharing all
Yeah.
of these great insights as it relates to your organization called Center Escape and how that is impacting
Yeah.
your clients and your stakeholders to help them to maximize on product and customer efficiency for their businesses. I'm sure our listeners gain great insight from all the insights that you shared with us today.
Yep, yep. And I try to keep it short because when you have this much research at your fingertips, sometimes you can tend to stray, off course and everything. But I hope the audience captured something from it, and like, receive some learnings. And yeah,
Yep, sounds amazing. Well, just want to remind our listeners to tap into Twitter if you'd like to follow us on Twitter. Our handle is Navigating CX. And feel free to jump on Facebook and join our private Facebook group, Navigating the Customer Experience Community. So until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. We also have a new book available on Amazon, The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience. It's available in ebook and paperback. So if you want to increase revenue in your organization, build a stronger service culture, and create employees or develop employees who are really mastering service delivery in your business, you need to grab a copy of this book. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.